Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded, sweltering Dubai airport, your cheeks stinging from the force of your own brother's slap, while your sister screams at the top of her lungs that you're a thief. I looked at my parents, hoping to find a shred of belief in their eyes, but all I saw was cold, sharpened disgust. They had no idea that the business class tickets in their pockets and the luxury suite waiting for them were all paid for by the very thief they were currently disowning. As they walked away, leaving me stranded in a foreign country without a word of remorse, I pulled out my phone and did the one thing that would make their entire world crumble. My name is Ava, and I'm 26 years old. This is the story of how a luxury family vacation turned into my worst nightmare, and how I finally stopped being the family's scapegoat to show them exactly what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. The humid Dubai air was thick, but the chill I felt was inside my chest. "How could you do this, Ava?" my brother Ethan roared, his voice echoing through the terminal. Behind him, my sister Chloe was putting on the performance of a lifetime, clutching her chest and wailing about a passenger's stolen wallet that she had conveniently found in my bag. My parents didn't even ask for my side of the story. My father looked at me like I was a stain on the family name, and my mother simply turned her back. They walked toward the private transfer I had arranged for them, leaving me behind like a piece of trash. But before I tell you what happened after that slap and how I left them with nothing, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring more of these real-life stories to you. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Drop a comment below. I read every single one of them. Now, let's go back to where this pattern of betrayal truly began. Growing up in our household, the rules were never applied equally, and the roles we played were cast long before we could even speak. Chloe was the golden child, the delicate flower who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, while I was the reliable one, the scapegoat who was expected to handle everything without a single word of praise. In our house, Chloe's tears were always significantly louder and more important than any of my actual achievements. I vividly remember being 10 years old and winning first place in a citywide academic competition. I had studied for weeks, and when they called my name, I felt like I had finally earned a place in my parents' hearts. I ran home, clutching my blue ribbon, bursting through the front door to tell my mom the news. She gave me a quick, distracted hug and said it was nice. But then Chloe walked in from her dance rehearsal. Chloe's face was red. Her eyes were streaming with tears because she had messed up a single step and felt embarrassed in front of her friends. My mother's arms immediately left me to pull Chloe close, kneeling down to tell her that she was the most talented girl in the world. I stood there in the kitchen, still holding my first place ribbon, while my mother whispered that Chloe just needed more careful handling because she was so sensitive. Nobody even asked to see my ribbon that night. I learned then to celebrate my victories quietly and in total isolation. As we grew older, this pattern only became more surgical and more devastating. Chloe was labeled as the fragile one, the sensitive soul who needed constant protection from the harshness of life. Because I was the strong one, my needs were treated as inconveniences or ignored entirely. When I was 16, I earned a prestigious summer internship in New York. It was a massive opportunity that would have secured my future. But the moment I told my parents, Chloe burst into tears, wailing that it wasn't fair that I got to go away while she had to stay home. My father looked up from his phone and told me that I should skip it this year to focus on family unity. They told me I needed to be the bigger person and stay home because my presence made Chloe feel secure. I didn't go, and I learned to be small, quiet, and entirely undemanding of their time or money. Our brother Ethan was the enforcer of this dynamic, always stepping in to protect Chloe's fragility over my reality. He viewed Chloe as the family's prize and me as a project that was never quite good enough for his standard of perfection. If Chloe broke something, Ethan would tell me to just let it go because she was just a kid. But if I ever dared to speak up against her manipulation, Ethan would roar at me, telling me I was difficult or heartless for not supporting my sister. The lying started small, like the time $50 went missing from my mother's designer purse. Chloe immediately told our father that she had seen me near the purse that morning, which was a calculated and deliberate lie. I had left for school early, but my father didn't care about my alibi. He only cared about the accusation. He called me into his study, his jaw tightening as he told me how disappointed he was in my character. I was grounded for a month and told that I couldn't be trusted with any level of independence. Chloe watched me get punished from the stairs, and when our parents weren't looking, she gave me a cold, triumphant smile. She was learning that she could get away with anything as long as she played the victim, and I was there to take the blame. By the time I was 20, I felt like a ghost in my own house, only visible when they needed someone to blame for Chloe's failures. When it came time for college, my parents paid for Chloe's entire tuition, her luxury apartment, and all her living expenses. I, however, was told that because I was so capable, I should take out student loans and figure it out on my own. They claimed they didn't have the money to help me, but then I'd see them buying Chloe a brand new car because her old one had minor issues. Even after I started my own successful business, my mother would look at me with a disappointment that felt like a physical weight. She would tell me that I was too focused on money and that I should learn to be more giving like Chloe. They saw my hard work as proof that I didn't need them, which they used as an excuse to ignore me even more. Every holiday was the same script. My parents would brag about Chloe's perfect life while treating my career like a boring hobby. They called me selfish because I refused to pay for Chloe's luxury debts after she had drained their retirement funds. Ethan even mocked my success, telling me that no amount of money could buy the class that Chloe supposedly had. I stayed silent for years, believing that keeping the peace was my responsibility, but that silence was slowly destroying me. I didn't realize that every time I let a comment slide, I was teaching them that I wasn't worth protecting. This Dubai trip was supposed to be my final attempt to earn their respect, to show them that the daughter they had spent years dismissing was the only one who could provide the life they craved. But as I stood in that airport, I realized that you can never buy respect from people who have already decided you are the villain. The irony of being the family's designated disappointment is that while they were busy looking down on me, they completely stopped paying attention to what I was actually doing. Being invisible had become my greatest professional advantage. While Chloe was out spending our parents' dwindling retirement funds on designer handbags and spiritual retreats that never lasted more than a week, I was building a financial fortress. I realized early on that if I wanted a future, I had to build it entirely outside of their reach and their knowledge. It started right after I was forced to give up that summer internship. I didn't just sit in my room and cry, I got to work. I took a job at a local 24-hour diner, working the graveyard shift because the tips were better, and my parents were usually asleep, so they couldn't complain about me embarrassing them by serving tables. Then, I took a second job at a call center. Every spare second I had, I was on my secondhand laptop, teaching myself the ins and outs of digital e-commerce and software consulting. I wasn't just working, I was studying the systems that made people wealthy. By the time I was 23, I had launched my own remote digital consultancy. To my parents, I was just Ava, the girl who never leaves her room. My father would walk past my door at midnight, see the glow of my screen, and mock me. Still playing those video games, Ava? Maybe if you put half that effort into a real career, you wouldn't be such a burden on us, he'd say, his voice dripping with that familiar, casual cruelty. My mother would chime in, wondering aloud why I couldn't be more like Chloe, who was finding herself in an expensive art program that I was secretly helping to subsidize through my parents' bank accounts. They had no idea. They didn't know that the games I was playing were actually high-stakes contracts with tech startups. They didn't know that while they were stressing over the mortgage, a mortgage I was secretly paying half of by depositing money into my dad's account under the guise of an anonymous relief program, I was sitting on a net worth that could have bought their house 10 times over. I lived in a state of constant, quiet success. I dressed in thrift store clothes and drove an old, beat-up sedan because I knew that the moment they saw a single sign of wealth, they would find a way to take it and give it to Chloe. I saw how they treated my money. It was communal property if it benefited my sister, but a private matter if I ever needed help. But even with all that money, there was a hole in my heart that no amount of profit could fill. I still wanted them to love me. I still wanted to be the daughter they were proud of. That was my biggest mistake. I thought that if I finally revealed that the lazy daughter was actually the most successful person in the room, they would finally see me. I thought I could buy the respect that I had never been given for free. When the idea of a family vacation came up, and I heard my mother crying about how they could never afford to see the world, I decided this was it. I would pay for everything. But I didn't want to just hand them a check. I wanted it to be a dream. I booked the 5-star hotels in Dubai, the private desert safaris, and the business class flights. I did it all under the guise of a corporate bonus I had supposedly won from my entry-level job. I wanted them to experience luxury, and I wanted to be the one who gave it to them. I thought this trip would be the bridge that finally connected us. I didn't realize that I wasn't inviting them on a vacation. I was inviting them to show me exactly who they were when they thought I was at my most vulnerable. I remember the Sunday dinner when I finally broke the news. I had printed out the flight itineraries, 4 business class tickets from JFK to Dubai, and placed them on the mahogany table like a peace offering. My mother's eyes widened, and my father actually put down his glass of wine for a second. "A corporate bonus?" he asked, his voice filled with a skepticism that stung. "From that little entry-level job of yours?" I just nodded, swallowing the urge to tell him that my little job was currently paying for the very steak he was eating. Chloe, of course, couldn't let me have the moment. She immediately pouted, complaining that the dates didn't work with her creative brainstorming week. But the moment she saw the words 5-star luxury suite on the hotel confirmation, her attitude flipped. She didn't thank me. She just started talking about which designer outfits she needed to buy for the trip, presumably on my dime. The departure day at the airport was a masterclass in entitlement. Ethan was already acting like a high-powered CEO, barking orders at the skycaps and making sure everyone knew he was flying business class. My parents spent the entire time fussing over Chloe, who claimed she had severe travel anxiety and needed the window seat I had specifically reserved for myself. As we boarded the plane, the flight attendants greeted us with champagne and warm towels. While my parents and Ethan leaned back in their lie-flat seats, sipping vintage wine and completely ignoring my presence, Chloe spent the entire 14-hour flight complaining. She grumbled about the limited movie selection and told the attendant the caviar was too salty. Not once did any of them look at me and say, "Thank you, Ava, for making this happen." I sat in my seat, staring out at the Atlantic, feeling more like a paid assistant than a daughter. Before we get to the moment we landed in the desert heat, if you're finding this story relatable, or if you've ever dealt with ungrateful family members, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep sharing these powerful stories of standing your ground. And let me know in the comments, what's the most entitled thing a family member has ever done to you? I read all your responses. Now, let's get back to the arrival in Dubai. Stepping off the plane, the Dubai heat hit us like a physical wall, but my family treated the opulence of the terminal like it was their birthright. The private chauffeur I'd hired was waiting at the arrival hall with a gold-trimmed sign. Ethan hopped into the lead Cadillac without waiting for me, and my parents followed, fussing over Chloe's jet lag as if she were the only one who had flown across the globe. When we arrived at the hotel, a towering masterpiece of marble and gold, Chloe's jealousy reached a boiling point. She stood in the center of the lobby, surrounded by pillars of real gold, and scowled. "The lobby smells like old perfume," she whispered loudly enough for the concierge to hear. "And why is Ava's room on a higher floor than mine?" She didn't care that I was the one at the front desk, handing over my personal credit card to cover the massive security deposit. She only cared that for once, I was the one in control, and she hated me for it. I saw her eyes darting around, looking for a way to reclaim her status as the golden child. The storm wasn't just coming, it was already here. The third day in Dubai started with a sun that felt like it was personally offended by our presence. The heat was a shimmering weight on the city, but inside our gold-leafed hotel suite, the air was crisp and smelled like expensive lilies. I stood on the balcony, looking out at the Burj Khalifa, trying to convince myself that the money I had spent was worth the hollow feeling in my chest. Below me, the city was a masterpiece of human ambition, but inside this room, my family was a masterpiece of dysfunction. "Ava, where are my sunglasses?" Chloe shrieked from the bedroom. She didn't ask, she demanded. She hadn't even unpacked her own suitcase, expecting the hotel staff or Ava to handle it. When I walked in, I saw her standing amidst a sea of designer shopping bags, bags filled with items I had paid for during our pre-trip shopping spree. My mother was sitting on the edge of the bed, gently rubbing Chloe's temples. "She has a headache, Ava. Don't be so slow. Just find them so we can leave for the mall." I found the glasses under a pile of Chloe's discarded clothes. I handed them over without a word. I was playing the part. I was the silent provider, the one who absorbed the hits so the golden child could shine. We were headed to the Dubai Mall, one of the most crowded and prestigious places on earth. I had arranged a private VIP tour, a personal shopper, and a dinner reservation that people wait months for. I thought that by giving them the best of the best, I would finally be immune to their venom. The mall was a labyrinth of luxury. As we walked past the high-end boutiques, Chloe was in her element, pointing at window displays and glancing at our father, who would then look at me with a silent command to make it happen. Ethan walked slightly ahead, acting as if he were the one protecting us in this foreign land, his chest puffed out, enjoying the stares of people who assumed he was a wealthy tourist. We stopped near the massive aquarium. The crowd was thick, a mix of tourists from every corner of the globe. Chloe was being particularly difficult, complaining that her feet hurt and that the humidity in the mall was ruining her hair. She began rummaging through her large designer tote bag, her movements becoming increasingly frantic. "Wait," she gasped, her voice reaching a pitch that made several tourists turn their heads. "My wallet, it's gone." The air in our little group suddenly felt thin. My father stopped dead in his tracks. "What do you mean it's gone, Chloe? Check again." "It's not here. My ID, my cards, the cash, everything." Chloe started to hyperventilate, a practiced move I had seen 1,000 times since we were kids. And, oh my God, the passenger's wallet. "What passenger?" Ethan asked, stepping closer, his face darkening. "The lady at the cafe. I saw a lady drop her wallet near the fountain and I picked it up to return it to her. I put it in my side pocket for a second because my hands were full. And now both are gone." Chloe was wailing now, attracting a small crowd of curious onlookers. I think I was targeted." Then she turned her eyes on me. Those wide, tear-filled eyes that had always been my undoing. "Ava, you were holding my bag while I was taking those selfies by the shark tank. You were the only one who touched it." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Chloe, what are you talking about? I never touched your bag. It was on your shoulder the whole time." "No, you said the strap was twisted. You reached over and adjusted it." Chloe was pointing a shaking finger at me. "And you've been acting so weird all morning, looking at my bag, acting quiet." "Ava," my father's voice was a low, dangerous growl. "Give her the wallet." "I don't have it, Dad. Why would I steal her wallet? I'm the one who paid for this entire." I stopped myself, but it was too late. Paid for what? Ethan stepped into my personal space. "You think because you got some lucky bonus you can treat us like charity? You think you're better than us? You've always been jealous of Chloe. Always. You couldn't stand that she was the center of attention today, so you decided to ruin it."
"I didn't steal anything!" I shouted, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "Check her bag," Chloe sobbed, burying her face in our mother's shoulder. "Please, just check it. I just want the other lady's wallet back. I don't want to get in trouble with the Dubai police." Before I could protest, Ethan grabbed my backpack off my shoulder. He ripped the zipper open with such force that it nearly tore. He dumped the contents onto a nearby marble bench, my laptop, my water bottle, my makeup kit, and my travel folder. And then, something heavy hit the marble with a sickening thud. 2 wallets. One was Chloe's distinctive pink leather, and the other was a black designer wallet that clearly didn't belong to any of us. The silence that followed was louder than the mall's background music. I stared at the wallets in horror. I hadn't touched my bag since we left the hotel. I realized then, Chloe had planted them when I was at the guest services counter earlier. It was a setup. A calculated, malicious setup. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. "Ava, how could you? After everything we've done for you." "I didn't do this. She put them there," I screamed, but I could see the wall going up in their eyes. The same wall that had been there since I was 10 years old. They had already made their choice. They wanted me to be the villain. It made their world make sense. "You're a thief," Ethan said, his voice trembling with a terrifying rage. "A common, disgusting thief. You brought us here to humiliate us?" "Ethan, listen to me." The slap was so sudden and so violent that my head snapped to the side. The sound of it echoed against the glass of the aquarium. My vision blurred, and the world seemed to tilt. My cheek felt like it had been branded with fire. I looked up, tears finally spilling over, to see my brother standing over me, his hand still raised, his face contorted with a hatred that felt ancient. "Don't you ever speak to me again," Ethan hissed.
"We're done," my father said, his voice cold and flat, more painful than the slap itself. He picked up Chloe's wallet and the other one. "We'll return this to the authorities. As for you, stay here. Don't follow us. Don't come back to the hotel. We'll have your things moved to the lobby. You're a disgrace, Ava. I don't have a daughter anymore."
They turned and walked away. My mother didn't even look back. Chloe, the victim, tucked her arm into Ethan's, and for a split second she glanced over her shoulder. She wasn't crying anymore. She was smiling. The same cold, triumphant smile she had given me when we were children. I stood there, alone in the middle of a crowd of strangers, my face burning and my heart shattered into a million jagged pieces. They had kicked me out in a foreign country, with nothing but the contents of my dumped bag on a marble bench. They thought they had won. They thought they had finally put me in my place. But as I watched them disappear into the luxury of the mall, a new feeling began to rise through the pain. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was a cold, sharp clarity. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They forgot one very important thing. Everything they had in this city, the rooms, the flights, the very air they were breathing in that VIP lounge, belonged to me. And it was time to take it back. I stood there for what felt like hours, even though it was probably only minutes. The stinging on my left cheek was starting to dull into a throb, a physical reminder of Ethan's hand against my skin. But the real pain was in the silence that followed their departure. The Dubai Mall is one of the loudest places on earth, a symphony of fountain water, thousands of voices, and the hum of luxury. But to me, it was as quiet as a grave. I looked down at my belongings scattered on the floor like trash. My laptop, my work folders, my life, all discarded because of a lie they were all too eager to believe. A security guard approached me, his face a mix of concern and professional wariness. "Ma'am, is everything all right? Do you need medical assistance?" I looked up at him, my vision still slightly blurry from the tears I refused to let fall. "I'm fine," I whispered, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. I began the humiliating task of crawling on the polished marble floor, picking up my things while strangers watched and whispered. I saw a group of tourists point at me, their faces filled with judgment. In their eyes, I was exactly what Chloe said I was, a thief who got caught. As I was stuffing my travel folder back into my bag, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the hotel app. "Guest status updated. Room access for Ava Sterling has been revoked. Please visit the front desk for your personal belongings." My heart skipped a beat. They hadn't just walked away. They'd called ahead to ensure I couldn't even get back into the room I was paying for. They were systematically erasing me from the very vacation I had gifted them. I sat on a nearby bench, clutching my bag to my chest. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. I had spent over $30,000 to bring them here. I had spent months meticulously planning every tour, every meal, and every luxury experience to make them feel like royalty. And in return, they had left me homeless in a foreign city, thousands of miles from home, with nothing but a stinging face and a reputation they had shredded in public. I looked at the group chat on my phone. The last message was from my dad, sent just seconds ago to the entire family. "We are moving forward with the desert safari tonight as planned. We will not let one person's sick actions ruin this family's peace. Ava, do not contact us. We are done. Chloe had replied with a heart emoji. Ethan had replied, "She's dead to us, Dad." The betrayal wasn't just the slap, it was the ease with which they moved on. They were currently heading to a private car, probably laughing and talking about the luxury dinner ahead, while I sat on a mall bench wondering where I would sleep. They didn't care if I was safe. They didn't care if I had money. They didn't care if I lived or died in the middle of the desert heat. That was the moment the last string of hope I held for my family finally snapped. I wasn't their reliable daughter anymore. I was a stranger to them, and if I was a stranger, then it was time to start acting like one. I sat on that cold marble bench in the Dubai Mall for what felt like an eternity, watching the blur of happy families and excited tourists pass me by. My face still throbbed from Ethan's slap, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the icy realization that my own parents had just left me, their daughter, destitute in a foreign country. They didn't care if I had a place to stay, how I would get home, or even if I was safe. They were too busy coddling Chloe and protecting the family reputation from the very person who had actually built it. I looked down at my phone. A new notification popped up in the family group chat. Chloe had posted a photo of a gold-flecked dessert with a caption, "Finally, some peace. Justice served. Hashtag family first. Hashtag luxury life." My mother had liked it. Ethan had commented, "You deserve the best, sis. Glad the trash took itself out." A laugh escaped my lips, a sharp, jagged sound that drew stares from nearby shoppers. They thought they were the ones who had thrown me out. They truly believed they were entitled to the luxury surrounding them, forgetting the most basic detail of this entire trip. I was the architect of their comfort. I stood up, wiped the remaining tears from my eyes, and felt a cold, hard resolve settle into my bones. This wasn't about being the bigger person anymore. I had spent 26 years being the bigger person, and it had earned me a red handprint on my face and a seat on a mall bench. It was time to show them the real consequences that Pastor Harmon used to talk about back home, the kind that ripple through generations. I opened my travel folder and pulled out my laptop. I didn't need a lawyer or a scene. I just needed my login credentials. First, I called the airline's elite concierge line. "Hello, this is Ava Sterling," I said, my voice as level and professional as if I were closing a $1 million contract. "I need to make immediate changes to the return flights for reservation XJ7789. "Certainly, Miss Sterling. How can we help you today?" "I'd like to cancel the 3 business class seats for Chloe, Ethan, and Harold Sterling," I said. "Keep the one for Ava Sterling, but move it to the earliest available flight tonight, first class." "I see those were booked as part of a non-refundable corporate package, ma'am," the agent replied. "Actually, check the payment method," I countered. "It's a private black card in my name. I have full authorization to void the tickets. Process the cancellation now. I don't care about the refund. I want the seats gone." I heard the rapid clicking of keys. "Done, Miss Sterling. Their tickets have been voided. Would you like me to send a notification to the other passengers?" "No," I whispered, a dark satisfaction blooming in my chest. "Let them find out at the gate." Next, I called the hotel. I spoke directly to the floor manager I had tipped so generously upon arrival. I told him there had been a family emergency and that I was terminating the reservation for the royal suite immediately. "But, Miss Sterling, your family is currently at dinner," the manager said, sounding confused. "Their belongings are still in the room." "Pack them," I said. "Move them to the lobby storage. My card is no longer authorized for any incidental charges, room service, or extensions. If they want to stay another night, they can provide their own payment. But I think you'll find their cards won't quite cover the $5,000 a night rate." Before I make the final call that would truly leave them stranded, if you're enjoying this journey of standing up to toxic family members, please hit the like button and subscribe.
Your support means everything to those of us who have lived through these storms. Also, tell me in the comments, have you ever reached a breaking point where you finally had to say enough is enough? I want to hear your stories. Now, back to the desert. The final piece was the private desert safari and the 5-course dunes dinner I had scheduled for that evening. It was a $5,000 excursion, fully prepaid. I called the tour operator. Cancel the Sterling party for tonight, I instructed, and the private yacht rental for tomorrow, and the helicopter tour. Cancel every single voucher associated with my account. By the time I closed my laptop, the Golden Child and her enforcers were effectively homeless and stranded in Dubai. They had no return tickets, no hotel room, and no access to the luxury they were currently bragging about on Instagram. They thought I was sick and broken, but they were about to realize that the person they called a burden was actually the only thing keeping them afloat. I walked toward the airport shuttle, my head held high. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the reliable daughter or the quiet sister. I was free. I was sitting in the quiet, climate-controlled luxury of the first-class lounge, a glass of sparkling water in my hand, when my phone started vibrating so violently it nearly slid off the marble side table. It was Ethan. I let it ring. Then came a flurry of texts from my mother, each one more frantic than the last. "Ava, pick up! There's a mistake at the hotel. They've moved our luggage to the lobby." Followed by, "Ava, why aren't our return tickets showing up on the app? Answer us." I waited until the 5th call before I finally swiped to answer. I didn't say hello. I just listened to the chaos on the other end. "Ava, what the hell is going on?" Ethan's voice was a jagged mess of rage and genuine panic. I could hear the echoing bustle of the hotel lobby behind him and my mother's high-pitched sobbing. "The manager just told us the royal suite is no longer authorized, and the desert safari drivers just left without us because the booking was voided. Put Dad on the phone with the travel agent right now." "There is no mistake, Ethan," I said, my voice so calm it felt like ice. "I called them myself." The silence on the other end lasted 3 full seconds. "What do you mean you called them?" My father's voice broke in, sounding older and weaker than I'd ever heard him. "Ava, be reasonable. We're in a foreign country. Our credit cards are being declined for the hotel fees. They want us to pay for the incidentals Chloe racked up at the spa." "That sounds like a you problem, Dad," I replied. "You called me a thief. You said I was a disgrace. You told me you didn't have a daughter anymore. So I decided to take your advice. I stopped being your daughter and your bank account. I paid for every single cent of this trip. The flights, the hotel, the food Chloe's been complaining about, it was all mine. And since I'm such a sick thief, I figured it was only right that I stop polluting your vacation with my stolen money." "Ava, please," Chloe wailed in the background, her voice stripped of all its earlier triumph. "We have no way to get home. The tickets are thousands of dollars." "You should have thought about that before you slapped me in front of 1,000 people, Ethan," I said, looking at my watch. My flight was boarding. "You wanted me out of your sight? You got it. I'm going home. You can figure out how to pay for your own mistakes for once. Don't call me again." I hung up, blocked their numbers, and walked toward the gate without looking back. It has been 6 months since I watched the Dubai skyline shrink beneath the wings of my plane, leaving the chaos of my family behind. I didn't just change my phone number when I got back. I changed the entire trajectory of my life. I moved to a new city where I am not the reliable scapegoat, but just Ava, the successful woman who built her own fortress. I finally stopped living for their approval and started living for my own peace. Sometimes I look out of my new office window and think about that girl in the airport. She didn't just survive that storm, she thrived after it. The news from home, which I hear through old acquaintances, is a testament to the fact that you cannot build a life on someone else's sacrifice. My parents were forced to sell their home to cover the massive debts Chloe had hidden.
Ethan's perfect reputation is in tatters after the truth of his outburst was whispered through our social circles.
Chloe is finally working the long, difficult hours she always thought she was too golden for. They still try to reach out, some emails begging for money, others full of excuses. But I have learned that forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. You can forgive someone for your own peace while still keeping them out of your life. Those are both necessary sometimes. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about building something meaningful despite them. I have learned that your worth isn't determined by who stays. It's determined by how you grow after they leave. To anyone currently standing in their own storm, set your boundaries, build your purpose, and never let anyone tell you that you are not enough. You are exactly enough. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this journey. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps these stories reach those who need to hear them most. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.